Good afternoon, everybody, and we are ready to talk the Final Four. Our guest today is Sirius XM host Nicole Auerbach. We're going to be talking, as I said before, about the women's Final Four going on down in Tampa. Nicole is hosting a series of programming on the women's Final Four live for Sirius XM down in Tampa. Nicole, welcome. It's great to have you, and it should be a fun gig this weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's my fourth year in a row doing this live pregame and postgame shows for SiriusXM, and it's just been awesome to see the event and the sport just continue to grow and understand that there's more and more attention on it than ever before. So it's an honor. It's great to go. It's a lot of fun. The coaches on the women's side are just so accessible, great, happy to talk to you, and you just get a lot of great insights. So it's a really fun event. It's awesome to be covering a sport as it kind of is on this rocket ship of sorts. And I'm excited to get down there and provide some live coverage.
Well, you've had such a tremendous career so far, and talking about rocketing to the top. As you've gone along, and you've covered college, and you've done extensive work in college. Have you seen anything go as quickly? And I don't know why, but because those of us who have loved women's college basketball have basically just looked up and said, "You're now just getting to this. You
Right.
now just realize these these young women can play basketball at the high level." And I mean, I couldn't be happier to see that it's taken off. But are you in any way surprised that it's taken so long?
Yeah, I think a lot of people around the sport do have that sense of, hey, what took you so long? But we're happy you're here.
Right.
When they look at the increased coverage and attention, because it's
Mhm.
not like, the past women's basketball stars were less athletic or less
Right.
dominant. They were still incredible players. They just weren't getting the visibility that these athletes are now. I mean, it does feel like, we're in a different media landscape where, viewers are going where the sports are that they're passionate about. And I think it's, there's been little tweaks and tinkering around of making it a better TV product. There's been a lot
Right.
more pregame, halftime, postgame coverage of these games, which helps introduce you to players and understand what's at stake and understand the storylines involved, which keep you coming back for more. And I think that's helped. But softball's made for TV, volleyball's made
Yeah.
for TV. These are great sports to watch. And so I think that people are just more open to things that have not always traditionally been, in certain windows and with certain exposure, and finding that there's audiences for all of these sports as well. And, everyone always says it, if you build it, they'll come. But if you put these games on linear TV or in better time slots, and more people are exposed to it, they are going to stick around. I think that's what's been really impressive about this women's NCAA tournament is, you're seeing all sorts of great audience markers. And, we knew that it would be different without Caitlin Clark, but it's still in so many measurements, like the second best and most watched rounds and games and individual standalone moments than in the history of the tournament. And so that means that a lot of people who maybe were introduced to it through Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese or somebody else in recent years have stuck around too, so I think it's all about introducing people to it. And then when you start watching it, it's, it's very, it's great team basketball and there's so much athleticism that I think it's enjoyable to watch. And I think for a long time, people just didn't want to give it a shot.
Right. The other thing, and this is from my days as a producer and director, I could not be happier to see more women now involved in play-by-play, involved in the hosting and literally giving great insight into the game during the pregame, halftime, and postgame shows. I mean, if this is really an opportunity that has, again, we talked just about a minute ago how long it took to get people to this sport. Now we're actually getting women who are getting the opportunity to do the play-by-play and the rest of the sport in basketball, and actually branching out from that to other sports. And it's been a long time coming on that standpoint as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. We've also seen some relatively recent players get involved, like Aaliyah Boston is involved on the media side while she's still playing, right? And you can work it around, the off season schedule. And
Sure.
I think that stuff helps, right? It's all about
Hmm.
visibility. But also there's just a freshness when you get active players
Hmm.
engaged in the media side of things as well. And it's all interconnected. I think it all
Hmm.
plays into each other and helps support the sport. But it does feel like, it's kind of like everyone's catching up. And you've even seen a lot more written coverage of women's basketball
Hmm.
this season
Yeah.
through the off season, WNBA season. And so it's kind of everyone's realizing, there's an audience there and we want to be part of it. We want to
Hmm.
educate ourselves. We want to give people opportunities to cover this stuff.
Hmm.
And then also, have them stick around. But everyone's looking for revenue streams too, right? Like
Sure.
I wrote about this for NBCSports.com this week about, the units that they're
Hmm.
getting in the women's tournament this year for the
Right.
first time.
Hmm.
It's not nearly as much money as the men's teams earn for wins and advancing in the NCAA tournament, but
Yeah.
that is a revenue stream, right? Like
For sure.
everyone's looking for money, and to have that opportunity to put a dollar figure for the
Hmm.
NCAA to say, our women's basketball tournament is worth $65 million per year
Hmm.
in our media rights package. All of that just kind of goes against these antiquated ideas that like it was a money loser. There was no money to be had in the business of women's basketball. And so I think it's, you're kind of knocking down all those excuses as
Hmm.
you move on, and then you're trying to build out the media ecosystem around it.
I also think that the launching of so many solid streaming platforms have helped because they need content, and this is quality content. So you're with NBC Sports, of course. One of my favorite um streaming services is Peacock, and Peacock has been seriously involved in that as well.
Right. Right. I think all of that comes into play. And it's again, I think so much of, kind of this on-demand world that we live in
Hmm.
is like there has to be reasons for you to tune in. And so you
Right.
you do have some real serious data on the interest and engagement in women's
Hmm.
basketball fans that kind of backs up all of that support.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go and try to take a look at what's going to happen this weekend in Tampa. And that is, we got UConn and UCLA. That's kind of an interesting situation that you're so used to UCLA being involved in college basketball, but we find out this time around that the top seeded Bruins, this is their first trip to an NCAA, Final Four.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the men's side obviously has so much history.
Sure.
And you have to remember that women's basketball, didn't come under the
Hmm.
NCAA umbrella until
Right.
much later. But it is
Sure.
stunning when you think about it, because you do think of all the basketball royalty that have come
Right.
through UCLA. But they're the number one overall seed. Lauren Betts and the size that she
Hmm.
brings on both ends of the floor is really hard to handle.
Hmm.
And you kind of have to do it by committee. But it's interesting. I feel like they are kind of, I think Vegas has them with the longest odds to win it all,
Right.
despite being the number
Hmm.
one overall seed. But I feel like they're the team that's getting talked about the least, in part
Hmm.
because they are going against UConn, which has looked fantastic. And you have Paige Beckers coming off 3 straight games of 25 plus points.
Right.
She's playing like she does not want her college career to end. And she is one
Hmm.
of the rare UConn stars that hasn't won a national championship. So she
Hmm.
has a lot to play for here down the stretch. But I do think, people are really invested in Paige's story and her career
Hmm.
arc and the injuries that she's had to come back from and
Sure.
how well they played to get here. Certainly her combo and her duo with Sarah Strong, the freshman. And
Hmm.
then, of course, you got the all SEC matchup on the other side, and
Right.
South Carolina going for back-to-back titles. So I kind of feel like UCLA is kind of slipping through the cracks a little bit.
Yeah. And who doesn't love Gino Oriena? I mean, what he's done, with UConn. We talked a couple seconds ago about UCLA. I mean, there's no question that no one's going to ever take anything away from what John Wooden has done, but you know, Gino Oriena is the John Wooden of the women's basketball world.
Well, and what's crazy is he hasn't won a national championship in 9 years, which
I
is
know.
like forever in UConn history.
Right.
So it's been so interesting to see as the sport has, parity has increased. But the way I like to think about it is the depth at the top of the sport has increased. So
Right.
there's just more national title contenders. Like this
Mhm.
year on Selection Sunday, I was hosting our Sirius XM Selection Sunday show, and I was like, there's like at least 6 teams that you could make a legitimate case could win it all.
Right.
And I don't remember ever coming close to thinking that way on the women's basketball side. These teams can't really coast until they get to the Final Four. We've seen really competitive games in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 round. Certainly South Carolina was tested in both of theirs. But so there's so much more depth there. And it's come at the expense of UConn, which used to be just, a cut above everyone else.
Sure.
And like their second string was better than most of America. And now you have the talent dispersed in South Carolina's and Dawn Staley's dynasty coming up. And it's crazy to think that, UConn beating South Carolina earlier this year in the regular season, crushing them, was like kind of a moment for parity in the sport, if you think about it, because UConn wasn't in that category. They're kind of in the mix, but that kind of cemented them as a title contender. And not just the default that we've been so used to considering them. And so I think them being the non-number 1 seed that's here, not having won in almost a decade, Paige Becker's not having a national championship. It is a different place for UConn to be in coming into a Final Four after obviously decades and decades of history and success.
Yep. Now you cover not just college, basketball, but college football and the different conferences. And the interesting thing to me is, we just talked about the Southeastern Conference. Of all of Southeastern Conference schools, South Carolina just didn't strike me when they started becoming a power in women's basketball. I was thinking, Alabama, Florida, Georgia. But South Carolina, what did they do right that the others in the Southeastern Conference missed?
Well, they have Dawn Staley. So, we
are
that
doesn't hurt. Yeah,
it does not hurt. And they pay her well, right? She sets the market in the coaching salary side on the women's side. But that's so important. You have seen other SEC programs really grow and invest and support women's basketball over the years. I actually think a lot of it has to do, that's Title IX and just sort of like it's just the right thing to do. If you're going to renovate your men's facilities, you've got to do your women's too. So you have some state-of-the-art facilities across the conference, but it's a concerted effort, right? Like the level, the big name coaches, retaining them, luring the best coaches away from other conferences. All of that has happened throughout the SEC. And I think Dawn Staley has, welcomed that. She mentors other coaches. There was that famous story about how, she sent a lot of other Black coaches, the cut of the net when she won it for the first time. But something that I talked to Coach Yo at Ole Miss about, they were in the Sweet 16 this year.
Sure.
South Carolina's the standard. They're not dropping off. So you have to chase and get up to where they are. And I think that has helped elevate basketball throughout the rest of the SEC. And then, with Texas there, it's year 1 in the league, but Vic Schaefer was at Mississippi State and when they went to the Final Four. So, again, it's kind of all interconnected, but I think, one program has Dawn Staley and others do not. And that has been a huge difference maker over the last decade.
Let's take a quick look at what you're going to be doing this weekend. You've got a very busy weekend going on down in Tampa on Sirius XM. Let's talk about some of the programming you've got going.
Yeah, so we'll have a 3-hour pregame show on Friday from 3 to 6 Eastern, and we'll have a couple hours of postgame coverage as well. So we've got a bunch of great interviews lined up. We get a bunch of different coaches who will be on site. Mentioned Coach Yo, Bill Fennelly from Iowa State, Jan Jensen from Iowa. We'll also be talking to Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner, Val Ackerman from the Big East, and a number of the ADs of the participating schools, hoping to get Shane Beamer if he's able to get down there to support the South Carolina women's program. So we've got a bunch of guests. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then post game, we'll have exclusive interviews with some of the players involved in the action from both semifinals. And then we'll have more on Sunday. So we'll have a special, apologies. We'll have a special in the morning on Sunday. This is all on channel 84 on Sirius XM, our college sports channel. And then we'll have a live pregame coverage as well, leading into the national championship game on Sunday afternoon, as well as postgame. So yeah, it's chaotic, and certainly juggling so many guests, but it's what I love about covering this event is there's just so many opportunities to talk to so many impactful people, and all the coaches go. It's like the men's Final Four. You have a coaches convention, can wander into that coaches hotel and network and connect with a lot of people. And so many of them are gracious to talk about, the teams that they've played and gone up against, especially if they're in the Final Four. So it's a lot of fun. It's very hectic. I'll be running around downtown Tampa carrying, recording equipment, but wouldn't trade it for anything else because it's really fun. And with the coaches, Corey Close has been on our shows before, so excited to get to talk to her as a participant in the Final Four. Vic Schaefer's on Sirius XM all the time. And then, I've talked to Dawn after she's cut down the nets before for our coverage as well. So it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get down there. And, you and I were talking before we started recording about, downtown Tampa has really changed and evolved. I asked for dinner and bar recommendations, and I got just a million recommendations. So I'm excited to explore Tampa as well.
Well, let me just put it this way. Okay. If you truly want a Cuban sandwich, if that's something that you're looking for, there's only two places that do it right, and they are the original two places. The Silver Ring, which is a cafe in Ybor City, and the Columbia. So you've got a couple of places there that people do not understand that Ybor City, which is the epicenter of the Cuban culture in Tampa, was there 65 years before Miami existed.
Wow.
So that's where the Cuban sandwich came from. And if you want a good one, either of those places will serve it to you and do it well. And over at Columbia as well, they've got the black beans and rice and all the good stuff. So you've got plenty of wonderful places to go. But those are two that have been there for a very long time, and I quite recommend either. If you're looking for true Cuban food, it's going to get you right there.
Great. I will, or I'm writing them down as we speak.
Okay. Well, one last thing, shameless plugs. Nicole, we know you're going to be with SiriusXM down in Tampa, which is, we're going to pay attention to that all weekend long, but that's not just where we can find you throughout the week and throughout the year. Give us some ideas of where we can constantly check up on all your good work.
Yeah. So over on Twitter, I'm just at Nicole Auerbach. And I'll probably be telling you where I'll be and what I'll be doing on there. I will be writing from the women's Final Four for NBCsports.com as well. And then, of course, as we get closer to football, there will be lots on NBC and Peacock with our college football coverage and college hoops coverage as well. But yeah, social media and Instagram, Nicole_Auerbach. Those are usually the places I will tell you when I'm doing something. So you can follow me there and I will keep you posted.
All of the information on Nicole's social, as well as the information about what show she's going to be doing with SiriusXM over the weekend, is in the show box below. So if you happen to miss something, you can always come back, catch up. It's all going to be right there in the show box below. And we greatly appreciate your time that you've come on and joined us. But one last quick thing, and that is, do you have a favorite as to who might win the championship?
Oh, so Vegas likes UConn with how well they've been playing. I think that we are headed for a UConn South Carolina national championship game. And I do give the edge to the Huskies right now. I think South Carolina they've had some close calls. And there's just something that's not clicking in the way that their other championship teams were. Maybe it's just that some of the players are a little inconsistent at times, like Malaysia Fulwiley. Right. Or there isn't quite the same like alpha that they've had before. But I'm a sucker for a storybook ending. And so I think Paige Bueckers is going to get it.
Hey, you know what? That would be a wonderful way to go.
It would.
So we'll see you then. Nicole, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to get you back, hopefully, to talk some college football in the not too distant future.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the games, everyone.
Okay. Thanks to Nicole, and have fun watching all of the action and listening to all the action. Remember, as Nicole said, check it out on Sirius XM. They're going to have all of her coverage and the games all on channel 84 on your Sirius XM dial. So thanks to Nicole. Thanks to you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Take care.